Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Ankur Patel, and today I have a very special guest with me, Christopher Frankland, the Global Head of Product and Innovation at CoverDesk. Christopher, welcome to the show.
Okay, thank you, mate. Pleasure to be here. Good to see you.
Great to see you too. So just for the sake of our audience, could you just provide a quick background on yourself, what you've done over the course of your career, and then specifically what you're working on at CoverDesk?
Yeah, no, love to, love to. So I've been around technology pretty much my entire life. Won't go back too far, kind of give my age away, but I've been tinkering with computers from a very early days, in the early days in London, back to the old Commodore 64s and
Mhm.
whatnot. So I've always been around tech. Post university, went into the software development space. Worked with a well-known .com company, lastminute.com, founded in London by Brent Hoberman. And Last Minute sold, IPO'd in the late 90s. Shortly after that, I ended up moving to New York City, where I became an IT consultant, business partner with IBM, and worked across a number of different industries: Major League Baseball, publishing, Random House, financial services with Standard and Poor's, a whole bunch of others, but all around consulting, all around using IBM tech to solve customer centric issues within each of those verticals. Fast forward another handful of years, ended up moving to Lincoln, Nebraska, beautiful Lincoln, and came here to work with the carrier, emeritus, and spent 3.5 years on the architecture team there. And then kind of got sucked or pulled into the world of InsurTech.
Mhm.
Probably about 7 years ago, went to the inaugural InsurTech Connect in Vegas. Got absolutely hooked on the movement, the community, the message of trying to solve insurance and customer centric problems through technology. And kind of the rest is history from there. I'm at CoverDesk currently. I run the global product and innovation team, and we're kind of on a mission to solve insurance related problems through people, process, and technology. So kind of, I'm
Mhm.
sure we'll dive into some of that, but yeah, I, kind of a rapid history there.
No, I think that background is really really helpful, and it seems like you've been part of the insurance ecosystem for some time now as well, at least in recent years here. So I'm curious, what led you to found InsurTech 360? If you could share a bit more about that, that would be great.
Yeah, no, happy to. So part of what I do, Anchor, as well, is mentor and kind of advise insurtechs within this space. So I think with you guys, it was through the Generator group that I was connected. But I do mentor across a handful of other accelerators: Lloyd's Lab in
Mhm.
London, the GIA in Des Moines, Iowa, and InsurTech is Israel more recently. And the commonality across each of those is that bright startups, early stage startups, looking to get some exposure, some publicity, and being a tech guy, being able to kind of bootstrap things quite efficiently and effectively. I thought, why not build a platform, a content platform, very simple,
Mhm.
very straightforward, just a way to provide a channel for insurtechs to get their message out there. So really, that's kind of what it is. It's something that I do for fun. It's a way to publish content, just to kind of shine a light, perhaps, on some of the problems that insurtechs are solving around the world.
I think that's a huge benefit to the companies that are emerging in this space, and not to mention the beneficiaries of InsurTech, which end up being the carriers and other players in the system. And if we take a step back, what are some of the most significant trends that you're seeing playing out in the InsurTech landscape, especially with generative AI being such a large inflection point over the last year or so?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think back a year, and I think back 2 years, right? And we've seen certain trends come and go, certain buzzwords kind of enter the space and kind of blow up, and then they tend to disappear. I won't throw any obvious examples out there. Blockchain, but look, I'm actually a huge blockchain fan, so we'll come back to that. But generative AI, I think, is one of those things where we saw it perhaps emerge in a serious fashion a year or so ago. ITC companies kind of popping up on the expo floor. Everything used to be driven by blockchain or AI. Now it's driven by Gen AI or AI, right? So it's kind of, it has become the marketing mantra. So I think, seeing it being applied to many different areas across insurance and InsurTech is perhaps one of the biggest things I've seen over the past year. Anything that's kind of drawing companies closer to the customer, right? Thinking about insurance agencies, anything that's kind of helping companies understand, be able to tap into what the customer needs are, I think is perhaps what we're seeing across the InsurTech space. Customer-centric platforms, end-to-end solutions, predictive analytics, that type of thing where we're better able to quickly understand what the insured needs at that point of time is where I think we're seeing some much needed progress.
When it comes to innovation, how have insurance carriers, which some of them been around for over 100 years, maybe it can be 150 years and so, how have they typically grappled with new technology? Does it typically come within the organization? Does it come from working with other InsurTech startups? Does it happen through acquisitions? I'm very curious from your vantage point, what have you seen work best?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can speak from experience. I mean, I was I was with a carrier, as I mentioned, for 3.5 years on the architecture team. So, we worked with InsurTechs, we partnered with InsurTechs. We tended to think more of them as technology partners as opposed to specifically an InsurTech. But it's kind of a mix of both, Ankur. I mean, I do think that carriers sometimes have this broad brush applied to them, that they are not innovative, that they are not technology, that they aren't pushing hard enough to innovate. And my personal experience was almost not the complete opposite, but carriers have this challenge of managing existing customer relationships, managing technical debt that possibly goes back 30, 40, 50 years, right? In terms of processes and systems.
Yep.
Green screen tech, AS400. I mean, you're talking about technology that's very, very, is rooted very deeply within the carrier DNA and can't just be ripped out and replaced. So, I do sometimes think there's this kind of misinformation around, hey, carriers don't want to innovate. They do want to innovate, but sometimes it just takes a little bit longer for them to do so. So when I was with Emeritus, to their credit, we were looking at cloud solutions 7, 8 years ago, right? I mean, they were exploring, how do we build APIs? How do we, perhaps not rip and replace all of this technology at once? How do we kind of put the building blocks in place so we can partner with InsurTechs, but at the same time have parallel projects running where we want to replace those core systems. We want to be more agile, but the reality is we have to do it at a pace that works for the carrier.
Got it. No, I think that makes sense. I think there's a lot of like pre-existing considerations that are important when you introduce new technology for a carrier. Not to mention their existing process, their existing systems, some existing tech debt And you can imagine like all of this compounds to the point where it's potentially harder to bring something net new in, but there is innovation happening there, right? And I think it also happens from great partnerships with insurtechs that don't have all of like the pre-existing considerations, right? The operations and technical debt that accrues over time, and so they can move a little bit quicker. They have a blank canvas to work off of, and so by having insurtechs that are able to build with a blank canvas and have greater product velocity and release velocity, they're able to partner with carriers that are also equally innovative and leaning in to then go and introduce that in ways that work. When you look at insurance carriers and the areas of business, right? Let's break it down to like underwriting, distribution work that they need to do, claims processing, claims management, and policy management. I'm curious, of those areas or other areas that you see, which ones are the more likely areas for opportunity for some of the things that you're seeing on generative AI, but even just traditional machine learning? Which areas tend to move quicker and be easier to go and work in versus which areas are particularly difficult to go and introduce new technology, perhaps because they're more sensitive and there's like just a little bit more regulatory scrutiny there?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I think when we think about the complexity or the challenges, that there's the technical complexity, the technical challenges, right, of taking a core system and replacing it with something that's AI driven, right? I mean, how confident can we be that this data is accurate? How confident can we be that there isn't any bias in the data, right? So I think there's the technical question of, are we prepared? Are we able to leverage or utilize AI or generative AI or automated underwriting, automated claims handling, like all of these really cool things that we want to do as an industry? Technically, are we there yet? Do we have the right, data to do that? Conversely, there's a whole conversation as well around the customer side, right? It's how much of that customer interaction do we want to automate? The challenge is kind of the low-hanging fruit, the easier part to automate to some extent is sometimes the customer interaction, right? Hey, let's build a chatbot to replace the people on the front line. Let's build a chatbot that can answer simple questions that we may think are simple questions, but to the customer, to the insured, maybe they want to go a bit deeper, right? Maybe they want to start with a simple question, but they want to go a little bit deeper. I think we have to be very careful as an industry to pick and choose the areas that we want to automate, right? And that comes down to this idea of people versus technology, looking at the insurance value chain and saying, okay, you know what, this might be really easy to automate, but is that something we want to automate? Because
sure, yeah.
once we start to remove people from the conversation, once we start to replace them with AI, with technology, to some extent, we've lost some control over that relationship. So, look, I mean, for me, as a tech guy, I'm very biased. And okay, well, where can we automate? How do we automate? What processes can we automate? But I'm also very conscious of, making sure that we think empathetically, compassionately about the customer. Pick and choose where we automate, right? Where in the value chain are we applying chatbots versus having somebody at the end of the phone to still have a conversation with Ankur Patel, whose basement has flooded and he needs some reassurance around how to handle that. So it's a delicate one. There are companies in this space who are bringing automated voice AI. They're bringing a lot of solutions to this space that on the surface sound incredible. Wow, I can speak to a robot that sounds human, but as we know, there are so many nuances in human conversation that it's very, very difficult to catch everything, right? We can't be a catch-all as an industry with technology yet. Maybe that changes in 5 years, but right now, for me, we just still need to be very cognizant of where we use people versus where we use technology.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think what's interesting though is that there are certain parts of work that happen in insurance, like the claims processing. If you look at that process, there are parts of it where you can enable the internal employees to be quicker at what they do by taking away
Yeah.
administrative work. So it doesn't really affect the end user
Yes.
experience. If anything, it makes the end user experience for the party that filed the claim better because they're getting faster resolution, right? So here's kind of a more simpler workflow in some ways, which is you have first notice of loss, maybe happens over a phone call, maybe happens over email, and you have some supporting documents are submitted, usually via email with context and docs. You're able to go and unpack which documents are present, the information that you need from those documents, and then even go back to the end user, potentially the party that filed the claim, and say there's certain docs that are missing that we need as part of the submissions process. Could you please submit the missed documents at the time that they submit the documents for email? So they get a really quick response on like, is a packet complete or not? Because they shouldn't have to wait a week or so before they find out that something's missing, and then they have to go and submit more docs, right? That process should be a little bit more fluid. Same things when you have the claims adjuster, they should be able to get that information pulled out more easily, which is essentially like a work that a BPO would do, right? It's more administrative
Yeah.
in nature. So when they log into their workbench, they have certain things flagged, they have certain information pulled out, and so it helps like, speed up the whole claims management and claims process, and that does improve the end user, and it potentially is like less mission critical because there's still a human in the loop. And I think those are some low level, maybe less consequential areas that you can start experimenting and then introducing generative AI capabilities in. And I'm curious if that resonates with you, if those are some areas that you
Yeah.
see. Um, because I think some of the areas in insurance, like underwriting, are much harder because you start getting into much more complex processes. Not that they couldn't be
Correct.
done, but you may want to start with some of the easier cases, get organizational trust built in, get them good ROI, and then move your way into some of the more complex use cases that are maybe core to the business and then affect the P&L a bit more.
Yeah, no, Anchor, I mean, 100%. I mean, to kind of to tackle both of those things, I think absolutely starting, thinking about underwriting, right? I think with everything we need to think about, how do we segment? How do we segment the simple stuff from the complex, right? So whether it's claims handling, whether it's underwriting, whatever it might be, what can we really automate end to end? Because sometimes I don't want to pick up the phone. I actually don't want to talk to somebody. If I drop my mobile
Yeah.
phone, my cell phone, and my screen cracks, do I really want to go through a whole kind of laundry list? I don't want to be stuck in a phone queue somewhere to file a claim. Mate, it happened last year. I'm with T-Mobile. Kudos to that workflow. It was absolutely impeccable, and it was all digital. I went online, uploaded some photos of my phone. Everything was automated. Had the claim filed, had a new phone arrive, I think, within a couple of days. And it was a really, really smooth process. And we know we don't often hear about the good ones, right? We always hear about the really friction heavy, poor customer journeys. This was a really, really good one. So in that instance, I was absolutely thrilled that it was automated end to end. I didn't have to do it, I didn't have to worry about anything. Now, conversely, the year before we had hail damage on our roof here in Lincoln, Nebraska, as everybody does happens. That was an absolute nightmare. From a claims perspective, I became the claim manager. I'm with an agency. God bless them. They've been brilliant, but they are absolutely slammed. They cannot do everything. And I was managing the adjuster. I was managing the carrier. I was the person. I was the human in the loop, right? I mean, I was the project manager for my own claim, and it was stressful. I had the builder, I had the adjuster, I had the carrier, I had the agent, and here I am trying to just get this thing done, and it was the most stressful experience. So, like, my thoughts go out to everybody at the moment in Florida, right? With Milton, because I can't really fathom, or I can fathom, but to think about what they are going through today, are they being proactively looked after? How do they manage those? I mean, it becomes very, very difficult, very stressful, and I think there's so
Yep.
much more work that we can do around those complex things. The ecosystem of carrier, insured, agents, adjuster, claim. We've still got so much work to do to remove a lot of that friction. And my roof was done 2 years ago. I honestly don't know how far we've progressed since then. I love Gen AI.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing that we can have more intelligent conversations with a robot. But is that really fixing all of these other issues around communication and effective collaboration across the whole value chain?
I completely agree. I completely agree. I think that's right. And one thing I do want to highlight here is, I'm very curious, sort of how big carriers go about looking at some of the things that they need to get support on, right? Because I imagine a lot of the
Yep.
carriers, as most enterprises are starting internal, right? They're starting with
Yep.
their existing incumbent vendors, or they're using their internal resources to go and work directly with the foundation model companies or the hyperscalers to then experiment, learn what's possible, what's easy, what's hard, what's worth doing, what's not worth doing. And then eventually they will look at other options, including insurtechs that are building in this space. And for some use
Yep.
cases, it's better to build in-house or use existing vendors. And for some other use cases, they may decide to partner. So how does that usually happen within the carriers, that decision making process of what should they work on internally versus where should they get support externally?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, committees, the good old committees, right? Hey, let's create a committee to make a decision. I mean, it's one of the classic things I think with carriers is this notion of there being a lot of red tape to make a decision. Sometimes there is a lot of red tape, right? There are lots of committees that things have to pass through before a decision can be made. Um, I think that one of the, looking back 7, 8, and whatever, how many years ago it is that InsurTech entered the picture. I think one thing that InsurTechs brought to the table is this idea of agile, right? Thinking with agility, bringing the agile methodology into the workplace. And so, I think carriers historically have been very waterfall driven from a project management methodology point of view. Everything kind of takes a year to do something. It takes 6 months to change a field in a table somewhere, right? Because the impact it's like this house of cards. Um, I think InsurTech's kind of brought this idea that, hey, let's innovate, let's build, let's fail fast, let's fail forward, all of those cool buzzwords. But it's there's some truth to that, and I think that I think carriers are may have made a lot of strides there. It's difficult because you're trying to. We talked about it a little bit earlier. This idea of you know 30, 40-year old systems and processes and workflows. You've got to start somewhere. You have to document, you have to capture those workflows, you have to sit down and go through a lean design exercise and say, okay, this is perhaps where a piece of technology could be used to solve this particular problem, or this is perhaps something that was that Fred has been doing in a silo for the past 20 years. Let's bring it out of that silo and build. Maybe there's another way to handle that. So I think visibility is key within any organization, right? Having that holistic view of how you do things today is perhaps the key place to start. And then you can start. You don't. It doesn't have to be completely agile. You might have a project that needs to be waterfallish in terms of how it's run, but then there's a lot of scope, I think, to run things in an agile way. Test quickly. If you have APIs that you're able to quickly plug into different partner systems, it just creates that ability to think a bit more creatively, and then you get to have some fun with it.
So Christopher, I'm also curious on the AI side, right? I guess as you're looking at applications that you find to be more attractive than not, you've done a lot of work, or certainly have background in working on these, like working with agents to support people and make insurance a little bit easier. Now, of course, you have these AI agents, right? So these agentic workflows that have come up quite a bit, supporting in ways that are similar. In some ways, you have like a programmatic software version of a person, right? Like I guess an AI person, more or less, helping support real people in the work that they do. Where do you think, if you had to break down like the tasks that could be best suited for automation, what types of tasks would you earmark? I mentioned something earlier, which was around data entry and data like document processing, but I imagine there are other areas like customer support, assistance. It could be perhaps more on the quote comparison for some of the work that brokers do, or generating memos for why certain decisions were made regarding a claims, from the claims processing side. These are some examples, but I'm curious from your experience, which areas, what types of tasks are really ripe for AI, given where it is today?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there are lots, and we talked about on the insurer side, underwriting, claims, being able to segment by perhaps complexity of claim or type of policy. I think on the I'm really passionate about the agent side. We work with many agencies at Cover Desk, right? And we ultimately we are a people business. We provide people virtual assistants, people in the Philippines. That's where our team is mostly located. But we have teams that we provide to insurance agencies, and essentially we become part of your team. We function as an extension of your team. So we kind of immerse ourselves within the culture, within the organization, understanding your tasks, understanding your processes. And the reality, Ankur, is that I think by 2028 or 29, upwards of 50% of the industry is either retiring or leaving. So we have this enormous kind of gap to fill. And the question is, can it be done through technology, or is it a kind of more of a hybrid people and technology approach? And I'm firmly of the opinion that it's the hybrid approach. So whereas today we have a huge team of people that we provide as dedicated support to agencies, we're also thinking about technology as well, and how to augment their capabilities and also the agency's capabilities, right? And I think a lot of that comes back to thinking about the customer. I mean, everything I do is always focused around starting with the customer and kind of innovating backwards from there, right? How do we find the right policy for that customer at the right time? And that's where I see AI has been absolutely massive, right? This idea of being able to, from a high level, look at a customer profile and say, hey, what type of insurance do they need, right, at this moment in time? And there are ways to use AI and machine learning as well to build some recommendations around that. Whether it's a recommendation engine, if that some people may call it that, but just the idea that, hey, based on your age, based on your profile, this is perhaps what people might typically be insured for at this moment in time. And this, that sounds quite simple, but at the same time, we seem to we do a really bad job at selling the right of policy. And it's, it's just one of those things where if we can arm agents with that right information before they have the conversation with a potential insured, it just makes that initial conversation that little bit richer. And the same goes for renewals, right? I think the more information we have at renewal time, the better we can educate, the better that we can, provide the right advice to our customers when it needs to be provided. So everybody's short of time. Yep. Everybody's slammed with so many things going on. It's just about how do we get the right information to the right people at the right time in the most efficient way possible.
Yeah, and I think software, particularly powered by generative AI and other capabilities there, could be really, really great there. I mean, I do agree with the demographics challenge. I think because you have many talented people retiring, exiting the space, insurance in particular, and there isn't quite as many people that are equally talented that are coming up the rungs, especially from the younger generations. I think some of this gap will have to be filled by additional people, perhaps in other parts of the world, supporting some of the demographic gaps, especially among some of the Western nations, right, where this is maybe most dire. And I think technology has a huge role to play there. And I think one of the things I want to turn back to, though, is what you said earlier, which is there are individuals, particularly in the work that you do in the Philippines, to support some of this need. And I think the big worry in Philippines and other parts of the world is because technology is getting so good, some of the, let's say, L1 or L2 support that would have been provided, and this is maybe on the more customer support side of things, so it's not everything insurance, but maybe some of the easier tasks that are a little bit more vanilla, those are going to then really be supported by software almost primarily, right? And then the more complex cases will still require people, but basically the bar for people that to really step in is going to be much higher because AI is getting so much better, right? So it's taking on some of the easier things off the plate, making the experience for the end user better, by the way, not worse, right? Because having to deal with someone for something that is relatively straightforward that you could have software resolve would be better done programmatically because the response times are faster. You don't have long queues. You're not on long wait times. So your NPS score improves. But if you really do need a human operator because it's a particularly complex ticket that comes through, then you want an individual to step in. And so I do think there is a huge room for people to remain as part of this equation. But curious what you think about that, like general fear, worry, and maybe it's not even so much a fear or worry in the sense that it's like theoretical. I think that is happening, I believe, in certain spaces. And so I wonder what how do we kind of manage the change management piece of it, right? In terms of upskilling people to get really good at some of the more complex work, as some of the easier work is then being done by software.
No, all valid points. All valid points, and it's something I think about on a daily basis. Look, I think that I've been around RPA for quite a long time. Kind of the most basic form of automation, maybe beyond Excel macros, but just the idea of being able to automate simple clicks and whatnot on a GUI. But look, I think that I think we'll continue to see obviously the evolution of automation. RPA is actually still a really great technology, and it's still quite underutilized in the agency space. But look, I think the future of work is one where people will adapt to using digital tools alongside the more traditional channels, right? And I think that for our teams in the Philippines, I think for anybody really, it's this evolution from a worker who works on a siloed activity or set of activities on a daily basis to somebody who understands orchestration. They know how to piece these pieces, put these pieces together, use these different pieces of technology in a way that kind of collectively delivers a more effective result. And as a lean process guy, we train all of our people around lean process design as well, because the idea here is that we're elevating the capabilities. We're teaching people to think a little bit differently around process optimization, workflow optimization. We're not, you don't just do this task because it has to be done that way. Think about, is there a better way to do it, right? How do we solve this problem with technology and people? So, it's a tricky one. And I think that, as much as we talk about companies within the insurance industry falling behind technology, I think there's a massive risk where people are falling behind, right? We're not training people to think the right way. We're training people to solve problems. That's why Fred goes off and does his siloed thing, right? Because he just wants to do it his way. There's a massive challenge around trying to encourage people to think, it's the old thinking outside the box, right? But I think of it more as design thinking or lean design thinking, right? It's problem solving. And I think every single one of us needs to become a problem solver. And that's kind of where I'm pushing our team further in the direction of, you guys are going to be here, but your roles are going to evolve. They're going to change. You'll be problem solvers. You're not just going to be task doers. You're going to be problem solving using technology as a tool to help you do that.
How do you think about introducing new software to make the experiences of your team easier, right? Because I imagine that certain things that could be introduced, whether maybe they're introduced by your customers or perhaps within, so it's self-directed, will lead to more efficient use of your team. So your team is basically becoming superhuman at what they do. Maybe they are able to do 2 times as much volume in the same amount of time. Is that coming from software and tooling that you're introducing within the firm yourself? Or is that coming from your customers adopting new processes and tools, and their teams, as they learn how to use those, that software and tools, they're getting faster at doing the work that they do?
A little bit. So it's a bit of both, Ankur. It's a bit of both. And I think, we've been using RPA for a while, right? Internally, we use RPA for our clients. We advise around RPA and robotic process automation, for anybody who doesn't know what that is or isn't familiar with it. But it's just a way of automating. If you have 3 or 4 disparate platforms or systems, RPA is often the glue that can help bring that together, moving data around different platforms without having to use APIs. So, look, I mean, we've been doing this for a while. We, internally, we're always exploring ways to work more efficiently. There's always a better way. There's always a better way to do something, and it's quite fun. Teams are excited about it. It generates a lot of enthusiasm because, it's when you look at technology as a way to augment your day-to-day work, and it isn't perceived as being a threat, then that's a completely different work culture. And I think that's, we could get into that as well. But I think, that gets people excited. And I think when we speak to our clients, it's, the conversation is always around, okay, we're here to help you be more effective, to be more profitable. We want you to have we want your customers to have a better customer experience. And then typically, Ankur, that conversation then turns to, okay, let's take something as mundane as policy checking, right? It's fairly mundane, but it's very important. It's a very critical part of the policy life cycle. So how do we make that as efficient as possible, right? How do we remove or automate as much of that as we can, while still making sure there is a human perhaps still in there for the more complex pieces? So, it's always a combination of, I think your initial question was, from a software perspective, are we building our own? Is it, it's a mix. It's a mix of all of these pieces, but it all dials back to this idea of looking through a lean process lens and saying, it doesn't matter what technology you're using. How are you doing things today? Where are your people doing things manually versus where are they using technology? And then we can help plug the gaps, right? Whether we bring in people, whether we bring in RPA, whatever it might be, it's usually a combination of the two.
No, I think that's super helpful. I think that it has a purpose to play. There's certain things that could be helpful with. I'm curious from your perspective, what have been some of the big successes and potentially still open problems that RPA has yet to solve, right? Because it has been in place for some time, the technology. And so at this point, we do likely have a good scoreboard around RPA was really good at X and then really struggled with Y. And I'm curious what that is based on your experience.
Yeah, happy to share my experience with that. Look, I think often technology gets a bad rap. Not necessarily because of the technology, but because of everything that surrounds it. So you look at RPA. RPA is very powerful, very good at doing these simple things, right? You're just, whether it's screen scraping from a website and capturing data and moving it from a combo box in one particular field into, I don't know, into QuickBooks or whatever it might be. You can do things very quickly. The challenge, I think, with RPA is often around governance, right? It's the maintenance of those bots. You build 100 bots, amazing. They work incredibly well for the first couple of weeks, and then you're like, all right, done. Everybody's off the project. Hang on a minute. This so and so has changed their website. This combo box is now being moved over here, and things change. Requirements change. Regulatory things. I mean, that stuff changes. Right, the industry is always changing. So I think with RPA, sometimes the tendency was kind of like, all right, we built all these bots, we're done, we're seeing this amazing ROI, and then a month later, everything's falling apart and breaking. So to add to that, I think from a cultural perspective, from a cultural perspective, and this goes for any technology, unless people are changing their habits and behaviors to enable that technology to be successful, there's going to be a problem. And with RPA, again, let's pick data, right? If you've got garbage coming in, there's going to be garbage coming out. So if you've got bad data coming in, that bot is not going to function the way that it should. Who gets the blame? Typically, it's the bot. So you have all of these supporting functions that need to be looked at, need to be addressed. AI has the same challenge, right? A model, an algorithm is only as good as the data that it's built on. And a danger there as well is this the right data? That are we using the right data to make these decisions? So these are all challenges that I think we will see on an exponential basis going forwards with AI, just because RPA is maybe a little bit slower. It's solving these smaller challenges around integration, whereas AI, suddenly we're starting to make some pretty big calls, some pretty big decisions based on data that we, for the most part, hope is accurate and correct.
So I think things that you're mentioning on the RPA, where it's good and where it struggles, really resonate with me. I think RPA is one of those technologies that demos really well. You get a really great POC pilot, and then you get it out, and it does serve value to the extent that the process doesn't change, right? But if it's likely to change and likely to change sooner rather than later, then the maintenance costs, like you said, governance, right? The maintenance costs essentially are pretty high. And then it's a question of who does the maintenance. And then given all the maintenance that is required, what is that resulting ROI, right? Because a theoretical ROI versus the resulting ROI in reality tend to be quite different. And the problem I find with RPA is that it does serve a purpose, but it's only on very regimented workflows. And so there are so many more workflows in insurance that are more open-ended. They're variable. They have changing context. They require human-like understanding and reasoning. And decision-making, let's kind of maybe get down to it. It's like decision-making. You have to decide what action to take based on context that you have. And RPA, it doesn't work that way. It's a very linear set of steps that usually go through, more or less. And I think that's where generative AI could be a connective tissue, especially with these agentic workflows that have become much, much hotter, which is you have large language models that decide based on the context that they see, they decide what action to take. And so there's this routing capability, almost like you have a switchboard operator being like a central LLM, and that operator is then routing to the underlying LLMs to go and perform different actions based on the context. And so you have this more elegant orchestration of more of the tasks that need to be done. The tasks that make up a complex process. And so you get to more complete process automation, and you get to software that's also not only going to be more malleable and flexible in terms of adjusting to new circumstances, but frankly, I think one that could get better. And it could get better if you go and fine tune on some of the human in the loop feedback that you get. So the large language model, the parts in the agentic workflow continue to improve as you have more cycles and more repetition. And I think that is hugely valuable, because I think the difference between RPA and what we're calling generative process automation is that RPA does worse over time, right? As things change. Generative process automation, because it has that feedback mechanism, so that self-learning capability, if you include that, then it actually gets better over time. It gets better on your workflow, on your data as it sees more repetition. And I think that is going to be hugely different in terms of long-term ROI and also areas where this technology could be additive. So very, very excited to see what's possible here. And excited for what you're doing as well with the work that you have with the InsurTechs that you work with and the carriers themselves. I think maybe to close out some of this, for individuals that would love to learn more about what you do and how you work with InsurTechs to help support that process, and then also talk about InsurTech 360, where could they find more information about you and what you do?
Yeah, no, that's thank you. Thanks, Ankur. No, look, I mean, the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. That's kind of the number one spot where I'm usually hanging out. I try to post somewhat regularly, but you may find me speaking at a number of different events. Reuters, Connected Claims is coming up in November in Austin. I'll be there if anybody wants to say hello. I always love talking about this stuff. I'll be at InsurTech Connect next week, and so I may have seen you if this goes out in the future at some point. It was great to see you at ITC. But I mean, LinkedIn, and also come to coverdesk.com. Have a look at what we do. Hit me up, and we'll talk about RPA and the future of automation. Ankur, I think there's going to be, the challenge we have going forwards is going to be knowing when and where and what technology to use, and aligning that with the problem that we're solving. And I think that, look, I think RPA is always going to have a place somewhere in this hierarchy. But obviously, when you think about that evolution of automation, LLMs, Gen AI is here. It's not even coming anymore. It's here, and it's embedded into many platforms. Right? It's not even. I mean, this is moving so quickly, and we've got this challenge, right? We've got this challenge as people to be able to quickly understand how to use the right tools at the right times. I look at my kids who are 14, 11, and I've got a 3-year-old. They're all at it. Even my 3-year-old is it's just bonkers. I used to say that about the 14-year-old, right? When they had access to tablets. First of all, their brains are just wired in a different way. They can piece things together very, very quickly. So I think we have an onus as an industry to help people learn, to help them understand what this stuff is, beyond just creating fun images, beyond using chat GPT, what's the real impact? How can this really help you function as an employee more effectively? And that's the challenge we have.
And I appreciate that take and look forward to seeing you at InsurTech Connect. So Christopher, I appreciate the time. We'll include your details in the show notes, or guests could find you as well. And really appreciate you being on this podcast here.
Mate, thank you. That was a ton of fun. We'll have to do it again.
Yeah.